Good evening, you're watching News9 and I am Kartikeya Sharma. Today, we have 6 on points. On point 1 is about how Harvard has lost its top ranking and how Chinese universities are outpacing American universities in global rankings. On point 2 is about how 4 Gulf states convinced Donald Trump not to strike Iran. Are You Dead becomes the most downloaded application in China as people live alone and grow lonely. The application is a check whether you are alive or not. On point 4 is about which exercise will help you live the longest. Hold your breath. It is neither swimming or weightlifting. It is tennis. And it can add 10 years to your life. In on point 5, we will talk about the CIA post on X that says how to connect. And the post on X provides secure way to connect with CIA as the spy agency wants to know the truth about China. On point 6 is about the plan to use 61 million tons of Gaza rubble. Plan intends to dump rubble inside the sea to create an artificial island. In on point 7, we will talk about BJP alliance sweeping Maharashtra. Thackeray's lose control of BMC. Pawar and Congress poor third. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. BJP's Mahasonami decimates Thackeray's in their stronghold. Thackeray's and United Pawars decimated. Dhurandhar banner welcomes CM Fadnavis at his victory procession. BJP takes Rasmalai swipe at Raj Thackeray after sweeping victory in BMC polls. MEA closely monitoring situation in Iran advises Indians not to travel and asks those residing there to leave Iran immediately. ED filed charge sheet against Al Falah University in money laundering case. 140 crore assets attached. Jawad Ahmed Siddiqui, trust name under PMLA. Prime Minister Modi hails India's startup culture, says innovation and entrepreneurship driving self-reliant economy, praises spirit of Indian youth for creating a new startup ecosystem focused on solving real-life problems. Supreme Court issues notice to Karisma Kapoor on plea by Priya Kapoor seeking copies of her divorce records. Actress allowed 2 weeks to respond. Tonight, we focus on change that can reshape the balance of power. Chinese universities are rapidly climbing global rankings, while many American institutions are losing ground. And while Harvard University still remains a global heavyweight, even it is no longer untouchable. For years, Harvard topped international rankings that measure research productivity, the sheer volume and influence of academic publications. But that dominance is now under pressure. In the latest global research rankings, Harvard has slipped to 3rd place, overtaken by Chinese institutions that are producing research at an unprecedented pace. The university, now sitting at number 1, is Zhejiang University in eastern China, a position that would have been almost unimaginable just 2 decades ago. Experts say this is not because American universities are doing less. In fact, Harvard and several other top US institutions are producing more research than they did years ago. The issue is that China's research output has grown far faster, fundamentally reshaping the global academic landscape. 7 Chinese universities now rank among the world's top 10 for research production, a dramatic reversal from early 2000s when American universities dominated the list almost entirely. Analysts describe this movement as a potential turning point. Some warn it reflects a broader shift in global influence, where leadership in science and research increasingly mirrors geopolitical power. The concern is not just about prestige or rankings, but about innovation, technological leadership, and long-term national competitiveness. The shift comes at a time when American universities are facing new pressures at home. The Trump administration has sharply reduced federal research funding, arguing that cuts are needed to eliminate waste and refocus priorities. University leaders warn those reductions could undermine scientific progress, disrupt long-term projects, and weaken America's position as a global research leader. At the same time, immigration restrictions and tighter visa policies are reshaping who comes to study and work in the United States of America. The number of international students arriving last year dropped significantly, raising concerns that top global talent may increasingly look elsewhere, including to China, which has been actively courting foreign researchers with new visa funding and state-backed support. China, meanwhile, has spent years pouring billions of dollars into higher education. Its leadership has been explicit about the goal, scientific and technological dominance as a pillar of national power. Chinese universities now highlight their global rankings as milestones, and state media regularly celebrates their ascent. Researchers there are publishing more frequently, collaborating internationally, and increasing targeting top English language journals that carry global influence. Different ranking systems tell slightly different stories, but the trend is consistent. Even where Harvard still ranks first, Chinese universities dominate just behind it. Other global rankings show American institutions slipping steadily down the list, while universities in China, Hong Kong, and South Korea continue to rise. Experts caution that the full impact of US funding cuts may not appear immediately. Research takes years to complete, publish, and be cited. But the warning signs are already there. Fewer grants mean fewer projects, fewer papers, and eventually fewer breakthroughs, all of which shape how universities are ranked and how they are perceived worldwide. Supporters of broader ranking systems note that the US universities are still performing strongly when factors like reputation, student demand, and faculty awards are considered. But even those rankings show erosion. American universities still dominate the very top, yet farther down the list, more are slipping than rising, a trend that has been accelerating. Why does this matter? Because universities do more than educate students. They produce the research that fuels economic growth, medical breakthroughs, technological advances, and national security. Rankings influence where the world's best students study, where top scientists work, and where governments and companies invest. As one expert put it, strong universities signal strong strength, strong nation. And history shows when countries weaken their academic institutions, the consequences can be far-reaching. Tonight, the global research race is clearly intensifying. China is accelerating, America is receding, and the outcome could shape not just classrooms and labs, but the balance of power in the decades ahead. Now, in the second on point, I will tell you how Trump changed his mind on Iran. Let's decode as to what unfurled behind the scene in Gulf. An effort that may have helped prevent the region from sliding into a wider military confrontation. Senior Saudi officials have revealed that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt jointly worked to persuade US President Donald Trump to step back from potential military strike against Iran and instead allow diplomacy a final chance to work. According to a senior Saudi official, Gulf nations led what was described as an intense and exhausting last-minute push, engaging Washington at the highest levels. The warning was stark: any US attack on Iran would not remain a limited operation. Instead, it could trigger a chain reaction of retaliation and counter-retaliation across the West Asia, dragging multiple countries into conflict. These urgent diplomatic efforts came as tensions reached a dangerous peak. Some US military personnel were moved out of a major American base in Qatar, a clear signal of growing concern within the Pentagon. At the same time, US embassies and missions in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait issued security advisories, urging staff to remain vigilant amid fears that the standoff with Iran could turn violent at any moment. The backdrop to this crisis was Iran's deadly crackdown on protesters, which drew sharp warnings from Washington. US officials repeatedly suggested that military intervention was on the table if Tehran continued its actions. Iran responded forcefully, warning that it would retaliate against US military assets and shipping routes across the Gulf, a region packed with American bases, energy infrastructure, and vital maritime corridors. Gulf leaders feared that such a confrontation would be catastrophic for regional stability. Saudi officials say they told Washington clearly that a strike on Iran would open the door to severe blowback, not only against the US interests but also against neighboring Gulf states. Diplomats worked through the night using every available channel to de-escalate situation and prevent what they described as an uncontrollable regional crisis. Then came a notable shift. After days of escalating threats, President Trump publicly changed his tone, saying he had received assurances from very important sources on the Iranian side that demonstrators would not be executed. That statement was widely seen as a turning point, signaling a pause in the march towards military action, and suggested that diplomatic pressure may have succeeded, at least for now. Despite the easing of immediate tensions, officials stress that the situation remains fragile. Gulf sources say communication with Washington and Tehran is ongoing, aimed at preserving the trust that's built during the crisis and preventing a relapse into confrontation. One Gulf official confirmed that Iran was also delivered a firm message. Any attack on US facilities in the Gulf would severely damage Tehran's relations with its regional neighbors. For the Gulf states, the goal is clear: to keep the region out of another devastating conflict. While the immediate threat of military action appears to have receded, the underlying tensions remain unresolved. Diplomacy is still working behind the scenes, and leaders across Gulf are watching closely, aware that even a single misstep could once again push the region to the edge. So this is all I had on point 2. In on point 3, we take a look at the app that you are dead. Are you? The story blends dark humor with modern loneliness in China, and it begins with a name that is as blunt as it is unsettling. A new mobile app now widely popular among young Chinese adults asks a simple but shocking question: are you dead? That is the actual name of the app, at least for now. Designed for people who live alone, often far from family and close friends, the app allows users to press a single oversized green button to confirm they are alive. With one tap, a message is sent to a trusted contact, offering reassurance without the need for conversation or explanation. The cost is minimal and about $1, but the emotional comfort it provides has clearly struck a nerve. Developed by 3 young people in their 20s, the app quickly became the most downloaded paid app on China's application store and is now spreading internationally. With downloads reported in countries ranging from Singapore to Britain, the Netherlands and the United States, the creators say that the idea reflects a universal reality. Young people everywhere are moving to big cities in search of opportunity, often ending up isolated in the process. One of the developers says that the app was born out of the personal experience. After living alone for years in the southern tech hub of Shenzhen, he realized that the daily check-in messages can feel awkward or forced, especially for introverted people. The app, he explains, offers a frictionless way to stay connected without social pressure. The popularity of the app also reflects deeper shift in Chinese society. For generations, families traditionally lived together or at least nearby. But decades of rapid urbanization and economic growth have pushed millions of young people from home, creating a kind of internal diaspora. Today, more than 100 million households in China consist of just one person. For some users, app is novel and amusing. A 32-year-old woman living alone in southern China has described the name as funny and eye-catching, though she also expressed concerns about data security, particularly for women. She worries that the sensitive information about people living alone could become dangerous if leaked. Others see app in more sobering terms. A Shanghai-based designer who has lived alone for nearly a decade says she is not expecting the app to save her life. Instead, she hopes it could help ensure that if something were to happen, she would not be left undiscovered for too long. She says she wants dignity even in death and doesn't want to become a burden for those who would have to deal with the aftermath. The app's name has sparked particular controversy because death remains a strong taboo in Chinese culture. Even the number 4 often avoided it because it sounds like the word for death, and many buildings skip the fourth floor entirely. The developers acknowledge the discomfort but argue that the confronting mortality encourages people to reflect on how they want to live and what gives life meaning. Still, public pressure has pushed the team to reconsider. They recently announced plans to change the app's name to something less direct and more global appearing. The first attempt failed to gain traction, prompting the developers to invite the public to suggest a new name. More than 10,000 people have already responded. The reward for the winning suggestion is 666 yuan, a number associated with good fortune in Chinese internet culture. Whether the app keeps its provocative name or adopts a softer one, its sudden success highlights a growing reality for many young people in China and beyond, living alone, navigating uncertainty, and searching for connection, sometimes through nothing more than a single tap on a screen. Now, on point 4. Tonight, we turn to a question many people quietly ask themselves as they lace up their shoes or head to the gym. What kind of exercise actually helps you live longer? The short answer, according to science, is simple. All movements help. But research suggests that some sports may offer extra longevity benefits. Decades of studies have shown that the regular physical activity lowers the risk of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia, depression. Federal guidelines recommend about 150 minutes of moderate exercise a week plus strength training, but the encouraging news is that the benefits begin much earlier than that. Even just a few minutes of vigorous activity a day has been linked to a longer life. Experts emphasize that doing something is far better than doing nothing, but sports in particular appears to offer added advantages beyond basic exercise. They combine physical exertion with social interaction and mental engagement. 3 ingredients that researchers say are especially important for healthy aging. Among all sports studied, tennis consistently stands out. Multiple long-term studies from Denmark, Britain, and the United States have found that the people who play tennis or similar racket sports tend to live longer than those who are sedentary, and even longer than people who play other recreational sports. One large Danish study found that tennis players live nearly a decade longer than the people who didn't exercise regularly. Researchers caution that this doesn't mean that tennis directly causes longer life. It's possible that the people who play racket sports are healthier to begin with or have greater access to resources. Still, scientists believe the nature of the sport itself plays an important role. Tennis offers a full body workout combining endurance, strength, balance, and coordination. The constant changes in direction help improve stability and reduce the risk of fall, while the repeated bursts of intense movement followed by short rest periods mimic interval training, a highly effective way to improve cardiovascular fitness. Studies also suggest that tennis can improve bone density, help protect against fractures later in life. Beyond the physical demands, tennis is mentally and socially engaging. Players must stay alert, anticipate their opponent's move, and adapt quickly, all of which stimulate the brain. And because tennis is usually played with at least one other person, it naturally builds social connection, which research has long linked to longevity. Experts also note that the people tend to stick with tennis longer than many other sports. It requires only one partner that can be adapted to different fitness levels and is relatively gentle on the body compared with high-impact sports. That said, tennis is far from the only activity associated with longer life. Large studies have linked cycling, swimming, and golf to reduce risk of death over time. Cycling offers strong cardiovascular benefits. Swimming adds upper body strength while being easy on the joints, and golf combines light aerobic movement with balance, coordination, and social interaction. Resistance training also plays a critical role. Just an hour a week of strength training has been linked to significantly lower mortality, better mood, and sharper cognitive function. The message from researchers is not to chase a specific sport, but to choose activities you enjoy and can sustain. Consistency matters more than intensity. People who combine aerobic exercise with strength training tend to live the longest, especially when they stay active as they age. Experts also stress the importance of making exercise social, continuing to challenge both the body and the brain and engaging the whole body rather than relying on just one type of movement. In the end, the takeaway is reassuringly simple. You don't need the perfect workout or the perfect sport. You just need to move and keep moving. One researcher put it, the bottom line for longevity is this: find something that works for you and do it often. Now, in on point 5, I will tell you about CIA's ad on X to recruit Chinese citizens. Tonight, on point, as usual, and a highly provocative move by the United States intelligence community is drawing global attention. The CIA has released a video aimed directly at the Chinese citizens, encouraging them to come forward and share information with the agency while also outlining ways to communicate securely without being detected. The message delivered in the video is strikingly direct. The CIA says it wants to understand what is really happening inside China and is seeking individuals who know the truth and are willing to tell it. The appeal is framed as call to people who may feel frustrated, sidelined or unheard within China's system, positioning the agency as a channel for those voices. What sets this outreach apart is how it opens. Rather than relying solely on traditional covert intelligence recruitment methods, the video publicly walks viewers through step-by-step instructions for containing the CIA safely, contacting the CIA safely, including guidance intended to help avoid surveillance and protect anonymity. The move signals a shift in how intelligence agencies are operating in the digital age. It also highlights the intensity of the strategic rivalry between Washington and Beijing. Espionage between the major powers is nothing new, but really, is it conducted so visibly or so publicly? While Beijing has not yet formally responded to this video, the message from Washington is clear. The CIA believes there are people inside China who want to be heard, and it is openly inviting them to speak. And now in on point 6, I'll tell you the plan to use 61 million tons of rubble that Gaza has collected and what use will it be for. The time for on point 6 is on the use of Gaza rubble, a controversial and striking idea emerging from Gaza's next phase of governance, one that blends desperation, engineering ambition and geopolitical uncertainty. The Palestinian official chosen to help administer Gaza under a US-backed plan has unveiled a proposal that is already drawing attention well beyond the region, pushing vast amounts of war debris into the Mediterranean Sea to create new land, potentially even artificial islands as part of the Gaza's reconstruction. Ali Shah, a civil engineer and a former deputy planning minister, was appointed this week to chair a committee of Palestinian technocrats tasked with the governing Gaza after years of Hamas rule. He appointed a number of people to work with him, and his appointment marks the practical start of what Trump administration has framed as the pathway to ending the war and rebuilding the devastated enclave. Gaza today is barely recognizable. Nearly half of the territory has seen Israeli forces withdraw, while the rest remains under military control. An expanse of flattened neighborhoods, destroyed infrastructure and shattered lives. An estimated 68 million tons of rubble, much of it mixed with unexploded ordnance, blankets the territory. Shah's proposal tackles this problem head-on, and in a way that recalls Gaza's past. In earlier conflicts, Palestinians reused debris from destroyed buildings to build foundations, including parts of the Gaza's historic marina. Now Shah is suggesting scaling that approach dramatically. In a radio interview, he described a vision where heavy machinery would push rubble into the sea, reclaiming land from the water while simultaneously clearing the streets. In his words, Gaza could gain space even as it removes the wreckage of war, potentially completing this massive debris clearance within 3 years. The idea is bold, but it is also deeply contentious. Environmental experts have long warned that the dumping construction debris into Mediterranean could damage ecosystem, marine ecosystem, and alter coastal currents. Now politically, the plan raises the question about maritime boundaries, security oversight, and who would control newly created land. And practically, it depends on access to heavy equipment that Israel has historically restricted from entering Gaza, citing security concerns. Still, Shah insists that clearing the rubble is a prerequisite for any meaningful recovery. His plan unfolds in stages. immediate humanitarian relief and temporary housing for displaced families, followed by restoration of essential infrastructure like water, power and roads, and only then full reconstruction of homes and cities. He has offered an optimistic timeline suggesting Gaza could be significantly rebuilt within 7 years, a claim that sharply contrasts with UN estimates, which says rebuilding Gaza housing stock alone would take until 2040, if not longer. Shad brings technical credentials to the role. Born in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, he holds a doctorate in civil engineering from Queen's University, Belfast, and previously oversaw industrial development projects in both Gaza and the West Bank. But even supporters acknowledge that engineering expertise alone may not be enough. The political and security landscape remains unstable. Israel and Hamas continue to exchange fire. Negotiations over disarming militants group remain unresolved. And the deployment of peacekeepers, a key component of the US-backed plan, is uncertain. Shad says his committee's authority would initially focus on areas still under Hamas control and gradually expand as Israeli forces withdraw further. Eventually, he says, the body would govern the entire Gaza Strip from the Mediterranean coast to the eastern border. Notably, the plan has drawn rare, cautious support from both Hamas and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Hamas officials say it is now up to the international mediators in the United States to empower the committee. Abbas has framed it as a temporary administrative phase and stressed the need to avoid deepening political division between Gaza and the West Bank. Israel has not publicly commented on Shad's appointment or his proposal to dump rubble into the sea, but without Israeli approval for equipment imports, border access and maritime activity, the plan may remain theoretical. For now, the image is a powerful one, a territory trying to rebuild itself by quite literally reshaping the coastline, turning the wreckage of war into new ground to stand on. Whether that vision becomes a symbol of recovery or another unrealized promise will depend not just on engineering, but on politics, security, and whether the fighting truly stops. Now, it's time for a short break, but in On Point 7, we will decode the results of the 29 civic bodies in Maharashtra, which the BJP has swept, and Dhurandhar has made his point.
फाइनली हमारा घर।
तुम्हारी जिद का नतीजा।
मैं नहीं होती